Today on Carolina News.
We have to fix our roads.
Road bill blocked. The debate rages at the State House with less than 2 weeks left to pass a gas tax increase. See what the holdup is. Strolling on Main Street. Why the Columbia mayor led a walk to the State House. And goose chase. See a police officer's unexpected chase into work. All of this and more next on Carolina News.
Live from the capital city, Carolina News brings you your news first. With breaking news and in-depth reporting. Up-to-the-minute weather. And all your sports news and highlights. It's all here, now, on Carolina News.
Hello and welcome to Carolina News. I'm Jada Williams.
And I'm Robert McCackern. Big debate rages at the State House today. The gas tax increases on the Senate floor.
With only 12 days left in this legislative session, there's a lot of pressure to reach some conclusion and reach it fast.
Our reporter Andrea Esselman has been tracking the debate all day. Andrea?
Robert, Jada, time is running out for the gas tax bill. It passed the House but is stuck in the Senate with some pending revisions, and no one really knows if it will pass or not. So why don't we go ahead and take a look at some of those things that happened today.
We have to fix our roads.
Senator Sean Bennett took to the floor today to defend an amendment that proposes a gas tax hike of 10 cents over the next 5 years, Department of Transportation reform, and income tax reductions to offset the burden of more expensive gas. Senator Bennett argued that simply borrowing money to give to the Department of Transportation would be ineffective, especially if the agency is inefficient and needs reform.
So we'll spend $2 billion and get $750 million worth of value out of it? I understand the argument that we're spending more than we were a few years ago, but we're not getting results. My opinion is we're not getting results because we haven't done what we're supposed to do.
Those who oppose the amendment say it is too broad because it includes changes to income taxes. They argue it sets a precedent for all tax bills to be able to include all taxes, no matter the topic. Those in favor of the amendment defend the change to income taxes, saying it is a logical change that is not too broad.
It is a logical and natural expansion of where we were going if we are looking for a way to help people of South Carolina to pay for the tax that we are offering in the bill.
Debate is set to continue, but there is no guarantee the bill will pass by the end of this legislative session. South Carolina Governor Henry McMaster said earlier this month that if the bill is passed by Senate, he will veto it. Robert, Jada, back to you in the studio.
The Georgia congressional election is headed to a runoff between Democrat Jon Ossoff and Republican Karen Handel. Ossoff received the majority vote at 48%, just short of the 50% threshold needed to win the seat. Handel was the top Republican candidate, winning 20%. This is a big race for both parties as the Republicans are trying to defend a seat they've held for nearly 4 decades, while the Democrats are looking to see if they can use their anti-Trump momentum to try and kick Republicans out of office and regain control of the House. The two will meet on June 20th in runoff.
As nations across the world are seeing a growing rise in authoritarian tendencies, Venezuelans are taking to the streets in a massive protest against their left-wing president, Nicolas Maduro. But they aren't the only country facing a slip in democratic values. Carolina News reporter Brandon Knapp took a closer look today at the trend of declining democracy across the globe.
Protesters are taking to the streets in Venezuela today to rise up against what they see as an authoritarian power grab. Earlier this week, similar outcries were heard from Turkey. Countries around the world are experiencing what experts call a democratic backslide, in which strongman leaders are undermining democracy in order to gain power for their parties or themselves. Clay Fuller is a professor of political science at the University of South Carolina. He says autocratic leaders gain power by undermining democratic institutions.
So they rig the elections, they make it impossible to tell whether or not they were free or fair.
Professor Fuller says part of the reason democracies are losing their prevalence is public apathy.
I notice more and more students asking questions like, what's so bad about being a dictatorship? I'll tell them that the press is the oxygen that feeds terrorism. Why don't we just censor the press? And I'd censor the press. I'm like, what? That's one of the core foundations of democracy.
Here in the United States, less than 30% of those born in the 1980s say that it is very essential to live in a democracy.
It's the system that I'm used to, but I guess I'm not open. I guess I am open to a different form of government.
Depends where and
The location?
what it is.
It's
Places that aren't,
yeah, it's definitely
Yeah.
situational. Like, if there are places that are run that aren't democracies, that like people are still happy because
Sure.
they're being like ruled or like governed well.
Professor Fuller has one piece of advice for his students to avoid the rise of autocracy.
Don't put your faith in individual leaders, because people are always going to let you down. Put your faith in the institutions of the country, and they will last longer, and they'll also be more transparent.
With democracy on the decline around the world, some critics have pointed to our own president's rhetoric as anti-democratic. Luckily, we didn't see much rain yesterday, and the sun has been trying to peek out all day.
Let's check in with our weather reporter, Justine Powles, to see if we can expect any more rain. Justine, how's it looking outside?
Well, the sun just started to come out, Robert, so that's a good sign. It's going to be a little bit overcast and cloudy for the rest of the day, and the rain should hold off for today. Tomorrow we'll start to have really nice weather before it gets rainy again. And the temperatures will stay in the high 80s, and it'll be a little bit partly cloudy. Friday will be really hot, and it'll be the last chance to enjoy the day outside because we're going to be expecting rain this weekend. I'll let you know when the rain is expected to start coming up later in the show.
Former football star Aaron Hernandez has committed suicide in his prison
What?
cell earlier this morning. The Massachusetts Department of Corrections says Hernandez hung himself from a window with his bed sheets and tried to block his door by jamming it with items from his cell. The 27-year-old was serving a life sentence without parole for the 2013 death of semi-pro football Odin Lloyd. His death comes on the same day as the Patriots are scheduled to visit the White House to celebrate the team's Super Bowl 51 victory, and less than a week after he was acquitted of a double homicide in 2012.
The burned body left outside a Columbia apartment complex has now been identified. Lexington County Sheriff's Department says 18-year-old Keon Brantley died of a gunshot wound before police found his body burned outside of the Paces Brooks Apartments on Columbiana Drive. He was treated at the scene before dying. This case is being treated as a homicide. If you have any information about the case, call 1-888-CRIME-SC.
Sumter County deputies have arrested a teen they say posted a threat on Instagram about Hillcrest Middle School. Deputies say the 14-year-old wrote a post saying he wanted to shoot up the school. After speaking with students at Hillcrest, deputies were able to determine that the threat was not serious. Deputies say they have identified the student and he is being charged with disturbing schools, aggravated breach of peace, and threatening the life of public employees. The boy has been released to the custody of his parents, and the case will be heard in family court.
Ever wonder where those spam emails clogging up your junk folder come from? Our Carolina News reporter Haley